In this video, we're gonna teach you how to wheelie in 3 simple steps that are not only easy to understand and learn, but straightforward to practice. I'm Mike, welcome back to Joy of Bike, and in this video, I'm joined by Chase Wheelie, and together, we're gonna teach you how to wheelie.
All you need to get started with the wheelie is a relatively flat parking lot, a bike with a back brake, some flat pedals, and a helmet.
So to kick this thing off, we're gonna identify a few common misconceptions when it comes to the wheelie. The first one being that we need to pull up with our arms. This skill does not involve pulling up with your arms whatsoever.
The second common misconception is that you really need to exaggerate transferring your body weight to get on that back wheel. As we're gonna explain later, this is more about a timing and leverage thing than it is a body weight thing.
The third common misconception is that this is a skill that you need to practice in the grass. Unfortunately, grass has too much rolling resistance, which is going to make it really hard for us to initiate that front wheel lift.
And the last common misconception that I see all the time with people trying to learn how to wheelie is getting the speed a little bit wrong. A lot of people try it going a little too fast, and most commonly people try to initiate that front wheel lift from a dead stop. So we're gonna identify the appropriate speed to dial in this wheelie.
All right, so let's identify the 3 parts we're gonna cover in this tutorial. The first one being initiating the front wheel lift.
The second part is gonna be finding the balance point.
And the third part, after we find that balance point, is going to be maintaining that balance point. Now let's get started by doing a deep dive into part 1. We're gonna start this tutorial off by selecting the right gear. If you're on a single speed, disregard this bit. The goal here is to be in a gear that's torquey enough to easily get the front end off the ground, but stout enough to keep the front end up. This is gonna take some playing around to get right. Personally, what I find works best for the wheelie is being on the easier end of the mid-range of my rear cassette. In this example, I'm in too easy of a gear. Notice how easily the front wheel comes up, but I can't reach or maintain the balance point because the gear isn't stout enough for me to keep the front end up. And here I'm in too hard of a gear, which makes it too difficult to lift the front wheel up or even think about trying to get into the balance point.
So now that we've identified the correct wheelie gear, we're gonna do what we need to do to set our body position up correctly for the wheelie. The first thing that we're gonna look at to set up our body position is our saddle height. So if you have a dropper post, this is gonna be a little bit easier than if you have a static seat post, but either way, we wanna drop it to about halfway down. The goal here is to not have to reach for the pedals when we're in the wheelie, because that'll start to mess with our body positioning and our balance point. So we just want a nice comfortable saddle position where we get a nice bend in our knees and can provide smooth and consistent power delivery into the pedals. The next piece when it comes to setting up your body position is gonna do with your cranks. The first pedal stroke is really important when it comes to the wheelie, and we wanna make sure that our cranks are set up to provide the maximum power and leverage in that first pedal stroke. So we're not gonna wanna start with your cranks flat and level to the ground. We're actually gonna wanna start with a little bit of lift on this leading foot, about 20 to 30 degrees or a 2 o'clock position. This is really gonna help us maximize the leverage that we have in that first pedal stroke, and Mike is gonna demonstrate exactly what that looks like. To demonstrate how integral leverage really is when it comes to the front wheel lift, I'm gonna take my non-dominant foot off the bike and place it on the ground while keeping my cranks parallel to the ground. I'm gonna keep my body in just a normal riding position, and I'm gonna put energy into the cranks, and you're gonna notice how difficult it is for me to get this front end off the ground, if not impossible. Now, all I'm gonna change here in this example is clocking my crank arms back to that 2 o'clock position. I'm not gonna put in any more effort, nor am I gonna change my body position, and watch how easily this front end pops up off the ground. Okay, now that you've identified the correct wheelie gear, you've dropped your seat about halfway, and you're comfortable with that crank arm position for that first pedal stroke, start practicing putting these things together at about a walking pace. You don't want to start from a dead stop because it's going to be hard to keep the balance point accurate. And you don't want to start going too fast because it's going to take a lot more leverage to initiate that front wheel lift.
And as you start putting all of these skills together, just be cautious because that front end is going to start getting really light. And if that's something you've never experienced before, it's gonna kind of feel scary. And as you start to reach a point where you're gonna loop out and you feel like you're gonna fall on your back, just make sure you're keeping your trigger finger on that brake lever. And if you feel like you're gonna loop out, rip that brake lever to set the front end back down on the ground as safely as possible. Now at this stage, I really wanna emphasize that I'm not forcing a transfer of my body weight whatsoever. What I'm doing is putting energy into this leveraged crank arm, and as my bike pivots around that rear axle, my body weight goes from being central on the bike or effectively over the bottom bracket to over the rear axle or slightly behind. What this is gonna do is make maintaining or finding that balance point far easier.
You know what this actually makes me think of is just naturally kicking back into an office chair.
Huh. Whoa, how do we get here? Well, while you're here, let's break down how our body weight naturally transfers as we start the front wheel lift on the bike. A similar natural transfer of body weight occurs when we lean back in an office chair. Notice as I lean back, as I'm putting energy into the ground, that my body position really doesn't change. All that's changing is where my body weight is distributed as we lean back in the chair. This is happening because I'm allowing the chair to pivot but not forcing it. The same principle applies on the bike. It allows us to have much more control when initiating the front wheel lift. You can try this same exact thing at home or work to experience that natural shift of body weight and essentially practice wheelies anytime. Oh, and one last thing, practicing wheelies can consume a lot of energy. If you're looking for a way to fuel that fun naturally, look no further. We've got a 20% coupon code for Traction Coffee down in the episode description below. This coffee is roasted for riders by riders right here behind me. And if you've got any questions about it, let me know.
Mike.
Oh, is it time for part 2?
Yeah, dude, we're done with part 1. We're moving on to part 2.
All right, let's get it started.
Okay, in part 1, we really just covered this initial front wheel lift. Putting pressure into the pedal, doing what we need to do with our body weight naturally just to get the front wheel off of the ground. And the nice thing is, this is really all you need to know in order to apply the wheelie out on the mountain bike trail to get the front wheel up and over a root or a rock. But if you really want to start showing off to your friends and earn some style points, we're gonna go into part 2 and learn how to keep the wheelie going. To keep the wheelie going, we're gonna really just focus on delivering smooth and consistent pedal strokes. We really want to avoid this idea of chopping wood and really just hammering down one pedal stroke and then hammering down a second pedal stroke and so on and so forth. And really what we want to do is put pressure into that first pedal stroke to initiate the front wheel lift, but really focus on following it up with that second pedal stroke and then that third pedal stroke. And you're really going to find that distance in the wheelie when you're doing that. When we're talking about chopping wood, we're talking about this idea of harsh, individual, powerful, abrupt pedal strokes. We want to avoid that and really focus more on smooth, consistent, maintainable pedal strokes for the wheelie. So after 2 or 3 of these smooth and consistent pedal strokes, you'll ideally find yourself at that balance point. And a lot like what we mentioned in our how to manual video, which you can find right up here, the balance point might be really close to the loop out point, which would end up sending you on your back. So this is where we're really going to start using the back brake. First thing I always tell anybody learning how to wheelie is your back brake is your best friend. And it's really going to be the initial tool to keep you from ending up all the way on your back. So if you feel like you get to that balance point and a little bit past it, slam on the back brake and bring that front wheel down. If you ever find that the back brake isn't quite cutting it and you're still going off the back a little bit, this is why we recommended learning this on flat pedals, because you can easily just throw your feet down and slide off of your seat and end up with your feet firmly planted on the ground.
This is where it gets fun. We've finally arrived at part 3. So what we're gonna do here is take all the skills that we've learned in part 1 and part 2 and put them together so we can really figure out where that balance point is and figure out how to maintain that. So I'm gonna hand it over to Chase because he is Mr. Wheelie. Literally.
All right, at the end of part 2, we covered how your back brake is your best friend. And in part 2, we really covered how that is a safety mechanism for you. As we move into part 3 and we talk about extending the wheelie any further, we're really gonna see that this thing transitions from being a safety mechanism into the most integral part of maintaining the wheelie. Just like delivering smooth and consistent pedal strokes will help keep the front wheel up, delivering smooth and consistent braking will help keep that front wheel down. And it's really between these two forces that you'll find the balance point. The hidden key to maintaining the wheelie is always pulling the back brake. There's not a single time during a wheelie that I'm not actively on the back brake. It acts as a nice counterweight to applying pedal pressure, and it gives you a better gauge on how to feather that back brake to not just slam the front wheel down, but instead manage that front wheel and maintain that balance point.
By maintaining the two forces of brake pressure and pedal input paired with a little bit of practice, you'll be wheeling any distance in no time. So let's talk about practice.
But we talking about practice, man. What are we talking about? Practice?
We chose to teach the wheelie in the parking lot because it's flat and the parking spaces allow us to consistently gauge our progress. But this isn't the only place we can practice the wheelie.
One of my favorite places to practice the wheelie is on bike path rides. The cracks in the concrete act as perfect markers to test yourself throughout the ride.
Or while out on the trail to easily get up and over obstacles. One of my favorite places to initiate the wheelie is on techie sections of a trail. So whether it's a down tree, a root, or a rock in the way, being able to lift that front end up by initiating the wheelie and getting up and over it really makes sections a lot more approachable. If you'd like a more detailed tutorial on that skill, let us know in the comments down below. And with that, we've reached that point in the video. So if you enjoyed this one, cruise down and hit that like button. We also want to give away 3 $25 Traction Coffee gift cards to 3 different people based in the US. And all you have to do is cruise down to the comment section below and let us know what your dream bike is. And if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more like it, smash that subscribe button and ring that notification bell so you don't miss videos in the future. Thank you guys so much for being here, for riding with us today. We had a lot of fun. If you have any questions about the wheelie or anything really at all, cruise down, hit that comment section below. We'll get back to you as soon as possible. But with that being said, we're gonna go ride our bikes and we'll catch you in the next one. Later.
Oh my goodness, I knew we forgot the camera. While we're here, click right here if you want to learn how to manual. We covered that skill not too long ago. And click right here if you want to know how to get more speed on your bike without pedaling. Until next time, love you guys. Thanks for being here. Yeah.